Story was posted by a throwaway account in the relationship advice subreddit. The post is titled, "My fiance's mom gave me abortion pills as an early Christmas present. How do I navigate this situation?" I typed the title and proceeded to blankly stare at my phone because I can't even process how and why this happened. We were having an early holiday gathering hosted at his parents' house. It wasn't a small gathering either, and not everyone there knows we're expecting, except for his brother, mother, and father. Right before we got ready to leave, she gave me a small gift box, which I initially thought contained jewelry, and told me to tell her or my fiance what I thought of it. All of this kind of happened in a rush, and there wasn't even a gift exchange between everyone because it wasn't that kind of party, but everyone thought she was being sweet to me because we're getting engaged soon. I was honestly tired and opened the gift at home, where I discovered this wicked woman had given me pills, mifepristone and misoprostol, which are used for medical abortion. I understand she wasn't too happy about the news and obviously doesn't like me for reasons I can't fathom, but she kept it civil and so did I. But reaching this level, I genuinely don't know why she doesn't like me when the rest of the family is completely fine with me. I assume it's either because of my ethnicity or because she has a superiority complex and believes I'm not good enough for her son, since he graduated from a very prestigious university and has been financially privileged his entire life while I haven't been. Even though now I earn my own money and we are pretty much equal, I simply don't know. I obviously told him about it and showed him the pills. He saw how visibly upset I was, comforted me, and said what she does or says to me doesn't reflect my worth and that he would talk to her. I don't understand why he doesn't do something about it immediately. It has been almost 24 hours. We are happy about this pregnancy, and even though it wasn't exactly planned, it was welcome if it happened. That is something he and I discussed over a year ago. Edit, to those wondering how she could have gotten abortion pills without being pregnant. They can be ordered online and delivered discreetly. You don't have to go to a clinic. Or she could have paid someone to get them. Either way, they are accessible, and honestly, I don't care how she acquired them. It's what she did with them that matters. If you need any further adjustments or assistance, feel free to ask. Update. To start off, I didn't talk to any friends or family. I know the situation best, and I tried to view it from everyone's perspective. I want to provide some background so everyone can understand a bit better where I'm coming from. My partner is from a wealthy background, while I am middle class. My family has gone through periods when our electricity would be cut off, and my father would do any job to get vegetables, fruits, and bread. Meanwhile, my partner has had everything handed to him on a silver platter and had seen the world by the time I had traveled further than neighboring countries. I remember at the beginning when I met him, I mentioned an experience of staying at a hostel. He asked if it was like going with a school group. Yeah. Anyway, I have traveled a lot, staying at hostels, and truly loved it, especially when I traveled alone. I met so many amazing people and had late-night deep conversations. At one point, I was even convinced I had met my soulmate. On that note, the soulmate person, I dreamt of him again last night. I woke up before I got to speak to him. My partner was born into wealth. Several generations of his family attended one of the top 5 universities in the world and traveled extensively. You get the idea. I decided to do something manipulative. I know it's probably even illegal, but I had to do it in order to get him to open up. I told him I saw a cool hack on TikTok for a whiskey glass where you freeze water in the glass while it is tilted so you don't have to add ice. Whatever, you get the idea. So I told him to try it out, but my main goal was to get him talkative and open up to me. And no, he didn't talk to his mother, but once again, screw her. This is between us. I asked him if it worked well that way, and he said yes. To which I replied that I wished I could try it, but couldn't drink alcohol now, and he just laughed. I said maybe I should use your mom's gift. Haha, to which he only smirked and looked away from me, and I just knew something was up. I don't want this to be too long, but his mother is insane. She kicked him out at the age of 11 and called the police on the same day because she said he ran away. She threatened suicide and tried to do it. She is diagnosed with a personality disorder. This is as short as I could make it, because the update isn't really about them. I told him that personally I'm unsure about having a child, and he told me he would support any decision I made. So much for being a happy father. I am leaving the country in less than 2 weeks and will be having a medical abortion. I don't want to be part of this family. Essentially, their opinion is that I'm in it for the money, which I never even thought about, and yes, I'm financially independent. While I do live with him, I'm more than capable of living without his financial support. The leave is for me to take a break from everything that has happened. I put actual jewelry in his mom's box along with the abortion pills that came with it. It's a break is what I said to him because he was in a vulnerable position and I didn't want to distress him further. But I'm leaving and I can definitely provide for myself, so that's not an issue. In less than 2 weeks, I'll be away. Once again, thank you to everyone who commented and messaged me. It has been overwhelming and I can't reply to everything, but thank you very much for being there for me. Edit. The jewelry I put in the box is the ring he proposed with. I didn't buy her anything. User coming in the Nile said, "The world of the wealthy is a truly strange place. I used to work in it and around it as a peon, and the norms there are so ass backwards compared to the rest of society. I have so many crazy stories." User going all the J said, "I love how so many people assume they are middle class when they are obviously not. It works both ways. So few people admit to being well off. If you grew up having the power cut off with your parents doing low-wage gig work to feed you, you are not in the middle class." User Rohini Rambles said, "For those confused about the glass, I think that because it was used as part of the plan to assault her, she views the whole glass situation as a criminal tool. That's definitely a trauma-related viewpoint. I am glad she got out of that situation. She spoke a lot about his money. Even if she was not interested in getting it, she viewed his family's wealth as something that made her inferior to him and them. I hope she has a good therapist and takes the time to be single for a while to heal." This next post was made by a throwaway account in the same subreddit. The post is titled AITAH for causing a rift in my brother's marriage by calling out my sister-in-law for lying in front of everyone. Basically, I hosted a big Christmas party at my house last weekend, and what was supposed to be a fun evening spent celebrating as a family turned into a bit of a shit show, all because of my sister-in-law, Hannah. Now, for some context, my wife Jess and I got married this past September. We wanted to keep the wedding small and intimate, so we decided the wedding would essentially be child-free, with an exception for my half-sister since she's an older kid and I had asked her to be one of my bridesmaids. Back when my brother Alex and his wife Hannah had RSVP'd for the wedding, I made sure to call and remind them that sadly their baby couldn't come with them because it was child-free. I also want to mention here that I had told them about this back when we visited my brother and his family in the summer. Anyway, while on the phone, they said they hadn't forgotten and had already planned for Hannah's mom to babysit. However, when the day of the wedding came, Alex and Hannah showed up with, you guessed it, my then 8-month-old nephew. I'll be honest and admit that I'm kind of a pushover and I didn't want to make a scene on my wife's and my special day, so I regrettably let it go. We got about 2 minutes into the ceremony before extremely loud screaming and crying from my nephew began. The worst part was that they tried to ignore it at first, for about another 2 minutes before Hannah finally excused herself and him. Unfortunately, she couldn't go into another room because we were on a beach. At first, she just tried to walk further down the beach, but the crying could still be heard loud and clear, so she eventually walked back to their car and later decided that she and my nephew would go home and not stay for the reception, and only my brother Alex would stay. Fast forward to the Christmas party. Everything was perfect until Alex, Hannah, and nephew showed up after she had reached out a month prior to tell me they wouldn't be coming at all and would be spending time with her family. I was annoyed and decided to pull them aside when I went to greet them and asked why they didn't tell me they were coming, because I honestly hadn't made enough food to feed 2 more people for dinner, not to mention I had nothing for their son. Alex gave me a confused look and asked why I thought they weren't coming, and when I told him the reason why, all hell broke loose. Alex obviously questioned Hannah as to why she would do this, and her response was to immediately and loudly accuse me of lying and of hating my nephew. Obviously, this got the attention of the room and everyone stopped and turned to look at us like something out of a movie. He then asked why she would think I hate their son, especially considering I agreed to change the policy to allow him to come to the wedding, which, as you already know, I did not do. I quickly told Alex that wasn't true and explained myself and my reasoning behind my choice, that it wasn't personal and that I, of course, love my nephew. I reminded them that I was super cool about the crying and never said anything, even when I probably should have. Jess started to walk over to us from the kitchen, all while Hannah doubled down and tried to make it seem like I was lying, so I lost it and said, well, if I'm a liar who hates your kid, then I guess you should probably get the fuck out of my house. Jess stopped dead in her tracks, and the silence that came after was eerie. Hannah then started crying and quickly left with my nephew, slamming the front door behind her. My brother turned and gave me a sad look before following behind her. It didn't take long before I started to feel embarrassed that I let things escalate like that. Jess comforted me after they left, and we ended the party early because I don't even know how to properly process what just happened. Later, my brother texted me saying he didn't know who to believe. Apparently, Hannah is adamant that I allowed her to bring their son to the wedding last minute because I felt bad for trying to control what she gets to do with her baby. She's also saying I made the Christmas party thing up as well, claiming I've always had a vendetta against her and want to make her look bad. Alex says he just needs time and that he's heartbroken and worried that Hannah isn't who he thought she was. Other family members have been texting me saying they're on my side, but I do kind of feel like an asshole for how I handled everything at the party. I know Hannah is trying to drag my name through the mud, but I feel guilty for making her cry, intentionally trying to publicly humiliate her, and for ruining the vibe of my own party. So AITAH for causing a rift in my brother's marriage by calling out my sister-in-law for lying in front of everyone at my Christmas party. User DGF20 said, for trying to control what she gets to do with her baby. That was her real feelings about your wedding request to be child-free. Liars always tell on themselves. Instead of being an adult and discussing any concerns with you, she decided to manipulate the situation and go behind your and your brother's back. She did this to herself. Release your guilt. You shouldn't want your brother married to such a person anyway. I feel so sorry for your nephew growing up with a mother like that. So far, so bad. If he stays with her, moving forward, make sure everything related to events and planning is in writing through your brother only or on a group chat, and don't accept phone calls from her. User Pandoratastic said NTA. It's nice that you feel compassionate toward your sister-in-law, especially for your brother's sake. But you didn't create this problem, and if you hadn't called her out on her lies and manipulation, she would just continue doing it. You can't really keep the peace in a family situation like this. Trying to keep the peace is like trying to hold down the lid on a pot that's trying to boil over. You can hold that lid all you want, but the pressure is going to keep building until it explodes unless you do something about the actual source of the problem. And there's no way you could have handled this where no one would get upset. You've probably chosen the path that would lead to the lowest total amount of upset over time, even if it meant an uncomfortable amount of upset right now. User Dachshund Mom said, you've got to stop being the doormat. She thinks she can lie to everyone because you've laid down and taken it so much. Good for you that you've had enough. Now, don't go back to bending yourself in knots. I'd lay everything out for your brother or send him this post and tell him that going forward, you will not be talking to Hannah at all. Obviously, she can't be trusted, and so all communication will be through him, with confirmations made via text. Make it clear that you will not be called a liar in your own home and won't be extending any invites to someone who treats you this way. Update. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who read my post and tried to give me advice or just overall help me feel better about the entire situation. I originally intended to look more in depth at the comments and reply to some or answer questions, but I'm too stressed and too preoccupied because so much has happened in a short time. I now have a lot of new information to share that has changed everything. My brother is now going to be staying with my wife and me for the time being. We decided this when he unexpectedly arrived late last night, and we had a long talk where I learned the full scope of everything that had happened with Hannah after the party up until now. He said that after taking some time and space away from her, he asked her to have a sit-down talk. He explained to me that during this time, he realized that she was 100% lying and I was 100% telling the truth, but still wanted to try and give her a chance to fully explain why she would act the way she did, why she would lie, and how she could justify treating him and me this way. Hannah tried to deflect and gaslight him when first confronted, but when he made it clear he wasn't having it, she snapped and admitted to him that she's always disliked me, and the main reason why is because she's uncomfortable with my lifestyle. She went on to say that Jess makes her the most uncomfortable due to her appearance and what she wears, and that she's just so sick and tired of pretending none of this upsets her. There was more, but Alex said that was all he was going to tell me. All of that was, of course, her reasoning for lying to my brother by telling him that I allowed the baby to attend the wedding last minute, and that she had secretly hoped her baby would fuss or cry and ruin part of the ceremony. She explained that she wanted to do something similar for the Christmas party in order to make me look unhinged and like I didn't want them there, making the wedding incident seem like a completely different situation to the family, one where she is the martyr and I the aggressor. I always knew knew she didn't like me, but fuck. I didn't realize she was so homophobic that the mere fact Jess and I exist at all is detrimental to her. I decided that I'll never tell my wife the details Alex told me, but I'm honestly glad I know all of this now. I'll never feel guilty for calling out shitty behavior from people ever again. Alex assured me that he was extremely disgusted with her and what she said and had absolutely no idea she felt this way at all, but he then told me he wasn't actually done telling me everything she confessed. Here's where shit really hits the fan. Hannah, after going on her homophobic rant, started to get antsy and pace around the room, leaving my brother just sitting there, devastated and confused. After a few minutes of said pacing, she continued to confess to my brother, now explaining that not only is she having an affair, she is also 100% certain he's not the biological father of their child they've been raising together these past 11 months. What made things even worse was, after some prying, she eventually let it slip that the affair has been going on for 6 fucking years. She claimed it was love at first sight when she first met her college friend's older brother Josh at a party 6 years ago, but she also knew she never wanted to lose my brother as he was her perfect match, which obviously makes zero sense all things considered. Also, for some added context, they've been married for around 6 years, meaning she has been having an entire secret, serious relationship with another man for the entirety of her marriage to my brother. Safe to say, I am completely shocked, and all I've been doing is spending time with Jess and also Alex. He has been staying with us as I mentioned above, since things are extremely tense and hostile between him and Hannah. They are obviously going to be getting a divorce, but with Christmas literally around the corner, everything is on pause according to him. I respect this, but also cannot wait for her to officially no longer be in our lives. As for Hannah, she seems to have quite literally moved on overnight with Josh and their baby. Overall, I cannot believe she'd betray my brother like that, and I'm sad to know she's been so hateful towards me because of my sexuality. I don't know if I'll have another update, but maybe. I just feel so depleted after yesterday. This next post was made in the same subreddit by a user named Try Disastrous. The post is titled AITAH for not wanting my little brother to call me mom. I took in my little brother Jay earlier in the year. Our mom was sick when he was born and she didn't make it. He barely remembers her now, and our dad was literally only in the picture long enough to make me and then came back 20 years later to make him. So all that Jay has is me and my husband Chris. Last night, as I was putting Jay to bed, he was really sleepy and said, "Love you, Mom." He doesn't call me Mom, he calls me by my name. Usually, Chris puts Jay to bed, and he told me that a few days ago, Jay called him Dad. I don't want him calling us Mom and Dad. Yes, we're raising him as parents would, but we are not his parents. My mom is his mom, and it would be disrespectful to her to take that title. I'm not going to erase my mom. He's not adopted, he got taken in by his big sister. It's a thing that happens. We wound up having a huge argument about it before he left for work today. Am I the asshole? User bboon55 said, "It sounds like you are still really grieving for your mom. Have Jay call you a different name for the time being, maybe sis or sissy. As time goes by, you will all figure it out." User Arrow Eagle said, "I think you are making a bigger deal of it than it is. You and your husband will be the only parental figures that he will know. If you are uncomfortable with it, then you can stop him from calling you mom, but it really isn't worth arguing about." User Economy Rutabaga said, "Answer, let him call you what he calls you, but also take time to educate him about his birth mom with pictures and stories. Right now, he is a kid and does not know the difference, but repetition and education about your mother will make it easier as he grows up." Update. A few days ago, I posted about my little brother calling me mom and the fact that my husband had been letting him call him dad. My husband and I had a few bad arguments about it even after I posted, but he apologized and admitted he didn't know what it was like because he hadn't lost his mom and his dad had been around. He told me that he loved taking care of Jay so much that he didn't want to wait anymore to be a dad. I asked why it was so important to have that title, and he said he didn't know. It just felt like it made things mean more. We didn't really get a resolution then, and he got his mother roped into things. And funny enough, she actually sided with me and told him it was disrespectful to my mother. I didn't expect that because, well, my husband's always been kind of a mama's boy. But she did ask him if it was the title of dad that mattered or any title, and he said he wasn't sure. Then she went and talked to Jay all alone. He admitted that he was confused and that since I look so much like our mom, he sometimes gets confused and thinks I am her and that he didn't mean it and would stop. My mother-in-law told us that Jay was clearly worried about not fitting in or wanting things to fit in how they used to be and hadn't been adjusting to living with us like we thought. Pretty much, she said he doesn't feel like he has a place in our house. I don't know how she realized that, but she's a resource teacher and she suggested that maybe him calling us titles would work. I told some people in the last post that maybe I'd consider Chinese titles because we are Chinese, so I brought that up, and my mother-in-law suggested that Jay call me what is pretty much big sister and my husband what is big brother. It's only been a few days, but he's taken to it right away, and maybe because my husband was an only child, but he has this huge smile whenever Jay calls him by it. I know this wasn't a spicy update like some people might have been expecting, but I'm glad it wasn't. Thank you to everyone who posted sincere help. AITAH for not letting my husband control the money in our house. My husband and I have been married for over a year. He knows what I make hourly, but I don't just hand money over to him. Backstory. 10 years ago, my children's father took control of my bank account and income, spent my savings, and gave me an allowance of $50 a week from my paycheck. This had to cover gas, groceries, and diapers. I gave birth to our second child a year and a half later and would walk to the store so I would have gas for work. One day, I had to make a decision about buying diapers for my oldest child or my newborn. I cried in the diaper section because I couldn't believe my life had gotten to this point. I'll never forget the kind person who purchased the diapers for my children and gave me extra money to hide. When I got home, I was belittled and accused of stealing money to buy so much. When I explained that $50 a week for 4 of us, including diapers, wasn't enough, he told me to figure it out. I asked for $100 a week. Eventually, I convinced him to allow me more money. 3 months later, I left and swore I'd never allow another man to do that again. Present day. Fast forward 10 years. My husband was fully aware that I came with about $18,000 in credit card debt. I've successfully paid almost all of it in full over the past 2 years. I am responsible for groceries for our family of 5, the phone bill for us, and car insurance. I have my car payment and 1 credit card. My husband pays the utilities and the house payment. We recently purchased a new-to-us camper. He took out a loan on it and put the money I received from my totaled camper in the bank, so he has that as well as his vehicle payment. He says I should be giving him $300 or more a month for savings and to help with utilities, but I won't. If something happens to him, I can't access that account to pay bills, etc. I don't believe I'm on his account at all. I opened an account 5 months ago and have $250 from each paycheck placed into it for safekeeping. I also need to buy school supplies, kids' clothes, etc. His ex-wife shares costs 50-50 for their daughter, but my ex and I are not on those types of terms. My husband gets frustrated that my situation isn't like his, but I told him it is what it is. Every pay period, he asks me for money for utilities, and I brush it off or say that if he buys groceries, then sure. He claims that I don't know how to save money and thinks he should have what is left of my paycheck each week for vacations, going out to dinner, etc. I won't do it. The mere thought of having an allowance again terrifies me. Do I overspend some weeks? Yes, but I don't use a credit card to buy items anymore. I don't rob Peter to pay Paul like I did in 2020. I budget right down to using coupons for groceries and calculating what my grocery bill will be before entering the store. He says I need to trust him and let him hold on to all of our money together because his savings account is also mine. However, I just can't bring myself to do this unless I can have full access to the account as well. I don't see that being an option. He recently sold a vehicle and put $16,000 in savings while giving me $1,000 to spend on whatever I wanted. So I put $200 in the bank, bought each of my kids one Christmas gift early, ordered myself new glasses and contacts. When I wanted a hoodie for $20, he asked if I'd already spent the money he gave me. When I said, kind of, he said he wasn't buying the hoodie because he thought I'm irresponsible with money and regretted giving me the $1,000. He even asked for receipts for everything I'd bought. He knew about my visit to the eye doctor. He knew how much I'd paid. He knew about the gifts I'd gotten because I'd saved more than I'd spent on Christmas gifts. He's been very pushy about holding all the money, and his friends are beginning to make comments about it. They tell me I need to pay when we go out for drinks and insist that I pull out my debit card to pay the tab. I probably have $10,000 in the bank. I leave the tip. I don't drink when we go out aside from water. Occasionally I will have a sip, but I won't risk a DUI. I tip because the bartenders are usually really good at making sure my water is full all the time and I never go without it, so I take care of them. Am I the jerk for not letting my husband have control of all the money? Edit. I want to be clear that the debt I acquired and had when we moved in together was from a past relationship, taking a huge pay cut, and COVID-19. During COVID, my income was severely impacted. I hardly worked and was continuously looking for work while homeschooling both my kids. I was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and my ex-boyfriend who lived with me didn't want to help with anything and was a huge financial burden. I had to get that situation under control. Edit 2, our incomes are currently similar. In January, I was put up for a promotion, and once my training is complete, my monthly income will be 1.5 times more than his current monthly income. Based on his base pay, my current income is about $6,000 a year, less than his annually, but can go up to $20,000 more with overtime. Edit 3. His bills amount to roughly $700 a month. The house payment is $400, leaving $300 for gas, water, and electricity. As for mine, car insurance is about $250 a month. Last month it was $337. My phone bill is just over $264 and includes internet. My grocery expenses range weekly from $200 to $400 depending on produce and meat purchases, which is a big reason why I haven't been helping with household bills. I also pay for all streaming services, which can be quite expensive too. User Wrong Moose said, "Hell no, you're not the jerk. I walked away from a similar situation that you had with your ex. Your current husband sounds like his true colors are starting to show. Be careful. Good luck." To this, a user named Known Quantity said, "My first husband made me account for every penny, requiring receipts for everything. I never realized how naive I was until I was talking to a coworker. They asked me why I had no money while I was working, but he was sitting at home unemployed because he couldn't find a job he liked." User No Addition said, "I feel your new husband is trying to be financially abusive toward you. I'm on a bank account with my partner. My partner was going to give me access to everything in all his accounts, but the bank employee carefully cautioned him against that. I don't have an allowance. I spend what I need to spend. Usually, I will ask if it's okay if I'm going on a shopping spree, but over the years, I've been very conservative with my spending. I'm concerned you may be getting yourself into a similar situation with your current husband. He's trying to withhold access to the money that you earn. He is accusing you of being financially irresponsible and trying to make you pay all the time when you go out. That is abusive. There's no reason for you not to have access to your own money. Your current husband is waving a massive red flag." To this, OP said, "He says it is part of being married. My sister has been married for 20 years and they don't share bank accounts. To me, having separate accounts is normal. I have never been married before." He's also made a comment about how not allowing him access to my money means I'm hiding what I have so I can plan to leave in the future. Update. I took some of your previous suggestions. I asked him to go to marriage counseling, but he declined because he didn't have any issues in our marriage except for me. I suggested a joint bank account for bills only, while we would keep separate accounts for our savings. This argument was pretty much the end of our marriage for me. I opened my own savings account at a different bank than the one I was currently using. I didn't have a debit card, so if I needed to withdraw money, I had to physically go to the bank. I picked up side cleaning jobs for spending money so I wouldn't have to touch either account I had. We went to a sporting event with our children. After the event, the kids wanted fast food, which was fine by me since it was late and I didn't want to cook. He asked me when we won the lottery, and I told him I didn't feel like cooking, so it was fine, and handed him $20. 3 days later, when I went to work, he apparently had other plans for the money in his account that he wanted me to contribute to. When I came home, there was the ugliest car in our driveway. He wasn't home, he was at the bar, so when he pulled into the driveway, I pretended to be sleeping so I wouldn't blow up at him that night. Since he had been drinking for 5 hours, I knew it wasn't the best idea anyway. He was mad at me when I woke up in the morning because I didn't say goodnight to him and had fallen asleep by the time he got home. He said I didn't have to worry because he was going to take out a loan on the car to put the money back in his savings account. The same thing he did with the camper when I gave him money for it. Had I actually given him money to put in the savings account, it wasn't our money. It was his money. Financial decisions were his and his alone, apparently. I started looking for an apartment when I got to work, and within 3 hours, I was signing paperwork and getting a cashier's check for a security deposit. I told him the day before I was moving that I was leaving, and he asked me how I could do this without talking to him. I said, "Well, you bought a car without discussing it with me first, so I got an apartment without your permission." I filed for divorce on my birthday. I've been called a gold digger, accused of having an affair, and blamed for his current financial problems. I practically paid for the camper, but he decided to take out a loan on it to have money in his savings account. He doesn't want it anymore and said I have to pay for the cost of the loan to get it out from under him, but I don't see why I should have to. Since I gave him cash, I don't have a record of what it was for when I gave him the money, nor did he ever put it in the bank after I gave it to him. So if I want the camper, I don't really have a choice but to do it. He's asked for cash for the camper, and I literally laughed out loud at him. I told him I did that once already and I'm not doing it again or paying any additional costs. He calls me asking for the truth about whether I was really cheating on him and if that was why I left because I wasn't watering his garden. I told him marriages end for many reasons, not just affairs, and suggested he seek therapy because he has a lot of unresolved issues from his previous marriages if he assumes I cheated on him. I'm getting a divorce. After the divorce, I'll be looking to purchase my own home and have absolutely no contact with him. My children and I are thriving already in our little apartment, and I'm managing my money very well. He wanted someone to depend on him and need him. That just wasn't me. This next post was made in the same subreddit by a user named Sweetie Beanie. The post is titled AITAH for leaving my husband after years of putting his friends and family above me, then finding out he might not even want our baby. Evan, since I know you might see this, I know you'll probably say I'm overreacting, but by the time you read this, it's too late. I've already left and made arrangements with a lawyer. Context: I married Evan 5 years ago. We've been together for about 8 years. For the first couple of years, I honestly thought I'd hit the jackpot. He was attentive, thoughtful, and supportive, or so I thought. But as time went on, he slowly became more and more absent, putting his friends and family before me in every way possible. Background: Evan has this group of friends he's known since high school. They hang out constantly, and he's made it clear that they come first, even when it interferes with our life together. We'd have plans and he'd cancel at the last minute because they needed him for some urgent video game session or to help out. I didn't think much of it at first, but it got to the point where I realized I was always taking a back seat. Then there's his mom, who's difficult, to put it lightly. She's never liked me, and Evan has never defended me or set any boundaries. When she told me I wasn't good enough for her son at our engagement party, he laughed it off. At our wedding, she accidentally got into a fight with me over a small detail about our ceremony and has constantly undermined me since then. The final straw: I'm currently 6 months pregnant with our first child. Recently, Evan sat me down to tell me he's not sure he's ready for the responsibility of a baby. When I told him it was a little late for second thoughts, he got defensive, saying he wasn't convinced this was the right time and that I was putting too much pressure on him. He mentioned he'd talked it over with his friends and they all agreed he was just being honest. That's when I realized that in his mind, their opinion mattered more than his family, more than us. The last straw came a week ago. I had a small health scare and he didn't even show up because he was busy with his friends. That night I realized I couldn't rely on him and I didn't want my child growing up in an environment where their father wasn't present and prioritized everyone else over them. So I packed my bags and left. I'm staying with a friend for now and I've made arrangements to file for divorce. I'm ready to build a life on my own for me and my baby, even if it hurts like hell. Usercat LolaFat said, if it makes you happy. My cousin was like your husband. If his friends needed anything, he would ditch his significant other in a heartbeat. He had a great girlfriend that we all loved, but his friends told him to dump her since she called them out on their nonsense. She ended the relationship because, according to her, she wanted an adult, not a child. What happened was that all his friends got married and the group broke up because the biggest jerk of the group stood up for their girlfriend. Now my cousin realizes how toxic this friend group was. His ex met someone else and has been married for over 8 years. To this day, he regrets listening to his old friends. It's been over 12 years. User Inevitable Divide said, it takes 2 to make a baby the last time I checked. Since he was involved in creating the baby, he needs to step up and take responsibility for his child. If he doesn't think that he is father material, no problem, he will have to pay child support once the baby is born. Maybe his friends can help him with that too. You deserve better than this immature idiot. This final post was made in the same subreddit by a throwaway account. The post is titled AITAH for punishing my son harshly for a prank on a vulnerable person. I have a son, Jack, and a daughter, Alyssa, and I am married to Tom. Tom is Alyssa's father, but Jack's father is my ex-husband, Dan. Dan and I had a pretty ugly custody fight, and he lives in New York while we live in Texas. Over the years, Dan has unsuccessfully tried to get Jack to move in with him. It wasn't easy to fend him off since he is a very successful lawyer. Jack is a pretty popular kid in school. His friends on the wrestling team came up with a prank for him to ask a heavily autistic girl who had a crush on him to the prom as a joke, and for him to show up wearing a gorilla suit. Jack originally said no, but the wrestling team actually raised a fund that ended up being somewhat north of $800 for him to do it, and they paid for the gorilla suit. Jack agreed. If it matters, this is very out of character for him. After the prom, I was looking around on Instagram and saw pictures of him in the gorilla suit. I was surprised that he didn't take his girlfriend, Jess. After reading the comments, I learned what happened. To say I was furious doesn't even begin to describe it. I woke Jack up as soon as I saw it and screamed at him until my lungs gave out. Then, when Tom heard what was going on, he joined in. Tom and Jack have never gotten along. I can't prove it, but I suspect Jack's father, Dan, has a hand in that. Jack told Tom, "Screw off, I'm talking to my mother." So, we took away all of Jack's electronics and his phone. We had also paid for a car as his graduation present, but because of his prank and disrespect toward Tom, we instead gave it to Alyssa. We also forced him to give us the $800 that was raised for the prank, gave it to his date, and made him write a letter of apology. He was grounded for a month, and we canceled his 18th birthday party. When Jack's birthday came, there was a knock at the door. It was Dan with suitcases. Tom said, "What is this? The custody agreement says you don't get him on this birthday." Dan just looked past Tom and said, "Hey kid, I'm here for the jailbreak." He then pointed at a Mustang and said, "Hope you like Fords. You can practice driving your new car on a road trip back to NY. Let's take a detour to NOLA." The two of them were laughing, high-fiving, and backslapping as they ignored us while we tried to intervene. The only time Dan acknowledged me was to look me in the eye and say coldly, "Checkmate," while Jack yelled as they were driving off, "Screw off, Tom." Since then, Jack has gone completely no contact with me. He talks a little bit to Alyssa, and from what little she tells me, he's doing well. Dan is giving him the royal treatment, bringing him to steakhouses, Yankees games, and just giving him outright cash. It has been almost a year since this happened, and I'm going crazy thinking I've lost my son. So am I the jerk? Edit, I see there is some confusion about whether Alyssa is my biological daughter or stepdaughter. She is my stepdaughter. We really have a mother-daughter relationship to the point where it doesn't even occur to me to call her my stepdaughter. At the risk of understatement, Jack never warmed up to Tom in the same way. Update. On the advice of some of the posters, I reached out to Dan to see if he would be willing to consider brokering peace between me and Jack. About a week later, I got a response telling me to meet him, Jack, Jack's girlfriend Jess, and his friend from a past firm, Jonathan, at a cafe in Manhattan. He arranged a 6 a.m. flight and put me in a dodgy hotel in probably the most dangerous neighborhood in NYC. I arrived and saw Dan, Jack, Jess, and Jonathan. I noticed Jess had an engagement ring on her finger. Jonathan said Jack has a claim against me for stealing the $840, and until that is resolved, I am not to contact him, but only to contact Jonathan. I told Jonathan that was the money his friends paid him for the prank, and that I gave it to the girl. Jonathan said he was aware of the circumstances, but nonetheless it wasn't my money, and under the law it was considered theft. Jack has a legal claim against me. I said I didn't care if it was against the law. Jack had no right to that money, and they could sue me if they wanted. Jack said, "You locked me up in my room like a prisoner for a month, took the car bought for me with dad's child support money, took the money, and berated me for hours on end. Unless you're going to give me the car, this is the only thing you can undo. You said you wished we could have handled it better, so here is your chance." Or was that just bullshit lip service? I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't do it. Jonathan then gave me a cease and desist letter telling me not to contact Jack and to address all communication to Jonathan. Then Jack and Jess left, and I asked Dan if he could talk for a minute. I asked him if he brought me there to humiliate me, and he said actually no. He didn't. He brought me so I could humiliate myself. He'd actually worked very hard to get Jack to the point where he'd be open to talking to me again if I were willing to back down just a little. But since he knew that if I had to choose between my indignation and my own son, I'd choose my indignation every time, just like I did in our marriage. I asked him why he'd put us all through that. He said it was because a part of him wondered if I'd ever learn to pick love over anger. He bet his future that I wouldn't when he divorced me. So he had to see for himself how it actually turned out after all these years later. I asked him if Jack was just a pawn in his game. He said no. If I actually would have picked Jack, he'd be with me now and there would have been nothing anyone could have done to stop it. But instead, my indignation over a stranger was more important to me than learning to move on with my own son. I asked him, what about the girl? He then said, I hope she'll be a wonderful daughter to you since you lost a son for her. I told him I didn't know the girl. Then he said, sounds like a bad trade, and left. Also, I'm apparently not invited to Jack's wedding. User Fuzzy Tutor said, YTA for the fact that you felt a custody agreement meant anything on an 18-year-old's birthday. Taking away a graduation gift and giving it to your other child is also really unfair. What does Alyssa's mother have to say about this stunt you pulled? User Background Owl said, every step-parent relationship is different. What people don't realize is that your child may not like something you say, but at the end of the day, you and your mom will work it out. However, your husband, as his stepfather, can't say the same things. He just can't. I make it a rule not to correct my stepchild if his parent is in the room. It's not my job. Your husband walked into a situation you were handling and joined in. That was unnecessary. You took gifts away from one child and gave them to his stepsister. How do you reward a child for another child's misdeeds? It doesn't even make sense. So your question isn't fair. He needed to be punished for what he did. What he did was awful. Did he need his stepfather joining in on the tirade? No. Did his stepsister deserve his gifts? No. There is so much wrong here.